The rain fell like shattered glass over the broken street. A little boy stood in the middle of the muddy road, his small hands trembling as he clutched a piece of a broken red car, the only toy he ever owned. His cheeks were stained with tears, his eyes wide and full of shock. Beside him, his mother knelt on the ground, clutching her arm where a cruel hand had struck her moments ago. The factory guards laughed as they turned away, their heavy boots splashing through puddles, leaving behind the wreckage of a fragile world that had just crumbled. The child's voice broke through the roaring thunder, high, desperate, trembling. "They broke my toy and hit my mom." And then from the end of the street, the deep rumble of motorcycle engines began to rise, a low growl that sounded like the promise of justice coming alive. If you believe in kindness, in standing up for what's right, and giving second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KindHeartsHub. Let's make kindness stronger than cruelty. The story began in a forgotten corner of the city, where old factories belched black smoke into a tired sky, and children learned too early what struggle meant. Little Ayan was only 7, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. His mother, Syra, worked at the steel factory down the road, spending endless hours hammering and welding, earning just enough to buy a little rice, some lentils, and once in a blue moon, something special for her son. That toy car, red with a missing wheel but still full of dreams, had been that special gift. Ayan loved it fiercely, driving it along the cracks in the floor, imagining he was racing toward a world far better than this one. But that afternoon, everything changed. Syra's pay had been delayed for the 3rd week in a row. She had gone to the factory office to plead for her wages, money she desperately needed to buy medicine for Ayan's cough. Instead of compassion, she met arrogance and cruelty. The foreman, a man with more power than heart, laughed at her tears, called her names and shoved her out. Ayan, waiting outside with his toy car, saw his mother stumble. He ran to help her, his tiny hands trying to lift her up, but one of the guards snatched the car from his hand and threw it to the ground. The little toy cracked open. The boy gasped, looking up, confused and hurt. Then the guard smirked and struck Syra when she tried to protect her son. The sound of the slap echoed through the street, and time seemed to stop. The rain started just then, soft at first, then heavier, as if the sky itself couldn't bear the sight. The guards laughed and walked away. Ayan sat in the mud beside his mother, clutching the broken toy pieces. "Why did they do that, Mama?" he whispered. Syra could barely answer through her tears. "Because they forgot what it means to be human, my child." She tried to stand, but pain shot through her arm. The world had always been cruel to her, but this was too much. At that very moment, a group of bikers appeared at the far end of the street. They weren't the kind of men the neighborhood often saw. Their bikes gleamed despite the rain. Their jackets bore the name the Guardians. They were known by many as troublemakers once, men who had lost their way in life, but now they were different. They had turned their energy toward doing good, helping the helpless, and standing up for those who couldn't fight back. Their leader, Rafiq, had once worked in the same factory years ago before corruption forced him out. When he saw the boy's broken toy and the bruise on Syra's face, something inside him reignited. The anger, the memory, the deep sense of injustice he had buried for too long. The engines grew louder as the bikers stopped in front of them. The sight of Ayan's tears said more than words ever could. Without hesitation, Rafiq knelt down, his rough hands surprisingly gentle as he picked up the broken toy. He looked at Ira, then at the factory looming in the distance like a monster feeding on pain. "Who did this?" he asked quietly. Syra shook her head, terrified. "Please, just leave it. They'll only make it worse." But the look in Rafiq's eyes said otherwise. "Some things you can't ignore. Some wrongs demand to be made right." The bikers rode toward the factory through the storm, their headlights cutting through the darkness like hope breaking through despair. Workers peeked from the windows, whispers spreading. "The Guardians are back." Inside, the foreman's arrogance melted when he heard the engines stop outside. The factory gates clanged open, and the sound of boots on concrete echoed with purpose. Rafiq didn't shout. He didn't need to. His presence alone demanded attention. "You hit a woman who only asked for her due wages," he said, his voice calm but sharp as steel. "You broke a child's toy for fun. Tell me, what kind of men are you?" The foreman tried to bluster, calling for the guards, but the workers were no longer afraid. They had seen enough injustice to know when it was time to stand together. What happened next wasn't violence. It was justice delivered with dignity. The bikers didn't harm anyone. They made the factory owner face what he had done. The workers rallied, demanding fair treatment, fair pay, and respect. The foreman, cornered by the truth, had no choice but to comply. Syra's overdue wages were paid in full, and a promise was made that no worker would ever be treated that way again. When Rafik handed Syra the envelope, her hands trembled. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "We did," he replied, "because kindness isn't weakness and silence isn't peace." Ayan, still holding his broken toy, looked up at Rafik with wide eyes. "Can you fix it?" he asked softly. Rafik smiled, the kind of smile that said he'd been waiting for a question like that his whole life. "I can do better," he said. Later that evening, when the rain finally stopped and the sun dipped below the horizon, Ayan sat on the steps of their small house. The bikers were leaving, their engines humming like a lullaby. Rafik handed the boy a small box before getting on his bike. Inside was a brand new red car, shining and whole, but Ayan still kept the broken one carefully glued back together. "This one reminds me," he said to his mother, "that people can be good." The story of that day spread across the city like wildfire. People who had long felt invisible suddenly remembered their worth. The factory changed its policies. Workers began treating each other with kindness, not fear. And the guardians continued their rides, not for fame, not for thanks, but because somewhere out there someone else might be crying the way Ayan once did. And on quiet nights, when the wind carried the distant sound of motorcycle engines, Syra would smile and tell her son, "They're not just bikers, my love. They're reminders that even in the darkest places, light can roar." If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe to KindHeartsHub to keep kindness alive in a world that needs it more than ever. Special request, comment below with, "If you believe that kindness can rebuild what cruelty destroys."